Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. PaperX have done it. They finally win a championship, and this time it's at Masters Toronto, a banger grand finals. PaperX versus Fnatic did not fail to deliver, with some major implications as a result. What does it mean for Fnatic? What does it mean for the champions? How have they gone from where they were a couple of months ago to where they are today? So much reaction from around the world as well. Boaster 10s giving their perspective on the eventual champions and what it means for some of these other teams as we go into the World Championship in Paris not that long from now. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Wow, there are a lot of implications around this PaperX victory. The fact that it actually got to this point is remarkable. The first thing I wanted to mention, because a few of you guys pointed this out to me, and it was a major talking point during the weekend, and we talked about this roughly 12 days ago when this was first confirmed, that Team Heretics, the curse, right? Like the curse of Heretics or whatever, because they've lost a fair few, matches in recent times. They've lost at a fair few tournaments. At Masters Madrid, they lost to PaperX, who came third, and they lost to Sentinels, who won. They lost at Shanghai to G2, who came third, and to Gen.G, who won. And in Champions Seoul, they lost to Lev, who came third, and Edward Gaming, who won. So when they eventually bombed out of the tournament very early on, right, Heretics went out like far quicker than they expected to, I'm sure, and during the run, they lost to PaperX, and of course, famously, they lost to Wolves. And at the time, we talked about it on the channel to say, hey, who knows? Is the curse going to continue? One of these guys is going to come third, and one of these guys is going to win. And as the tournament transpired, well, what did we see? Wolves eventually came third, and therefore I guess at that point it was very, very clear who was going to win the grand finals based on the Heretics curse. Pretty remarkable, as the original poster says, hey all, one of PaperX and Wolves will be winning Masters Toronto, the other will be taking third. Thanks for coming to the TED Talk, and yes, welcome back a few days later. This is also kind of crazy to look at, right? This is Swiss system, elimination game, PaperX play Team Liquid. Again, it's always interesting, isn't it? Because if you're a team like Team Liquid, you're not happy with how the tournament went. But then you look in hindsight and you say, well, we came so close against the eventual champions, and there is always a lot of this that happens because teams might think, well, could have gone differently, could have been a very different tournament for us. As we know, this was a moment that potentially could have changed the tide of the tournament. Of course, did not in the end. PaperX did make it to the grand finals, and there were some cool moments in this grand finals. I think this is a big one, right? PaperX versus Fnatic here on the map 1. I mean, look at the plays they made here on the Sunset to end up closing out this game. I thought it was really sick little set play that PaperX came up with here, bringing back the Sage Walls, and Jin gets a pretty free 2k off of this one. Alpha and Boaster did not see that one coming, and yeah, just a cool moment and a great way to close out the first map of the series. I thought it was nice as well to see this from Sapphire. So Sapphire put out what this looks like from the perspective of the casters, like the observers right in the game, because it was a Hall of Fame play, you could argue, that little combo play. And the fact that the observers managed to capture this one properly from all the angles and actually got it right was great, because you can imagine that a play like this, if this play happens but yet nobody sees it, then nobody cares, right? This is why the observers in any game are so important, and I just thought it was a cool little moment, right, that they managed to capture that on the broadcast, kind of celebrate it, and then of course the game concludes, sunset goes the way of PaperX, but it was far from easy for them to still close out the tournament, right? It went all the way pretty much down to the wire. Every map was a banger, to be honest. I thought it was going to go 5 maybe, but in the end PaperX took it in 4, as we say. The sunset was 13-11 with that massive defensive round. The Icebox then was a Fnatic bounce back, was such a critical map for Fnatic to win. We know that Fnatic, they love Icebox historically. It's been a great map for them. Kayak had a phenomenal map here on the Jet, as Durka often used to do, and in the end they won the overtime. It was, they probably will feel like they should have closed it out easier and saved themselves the heartbreak maybe of how things eventually went, but yeah, they lost 5 in a row on their defensive side. It went to overtime, but then Fnatic bounced back and won when it mattered in the overtime. Poll was then 13-10, and then we had an incredibly competitive Lotus to close out the series. Again, this was a map that Fnatic also really like. PaperX had the opportunities to do what they wanted in the ban stage. They got rid of Haven, that totally makes sense. They got rid of Ascent, which I understand as well. Split was left over. Could you imagine how good the Split Decider would have been if we went there, given where these guys would have been? But yeah, this was, it went by the picks, right? Sunset was PaperX's pick, they won it. Icebox was Fnatic's pick, they won it. PaperX was Pearl's pick, they won it. But Lotus was, maybe expected expected to be the chance for Fnatic to take it all away. Like, Fnatic have a deep map pool themselves. The fact that PaperX banned out Haven and banned out Ascent, and yet there was still Icebox and Lotus in the series for Fnatic to potentially win, was very impressive, I think, from the strength and depth of these teams. But Alpha had a real, good try. I mean, Alpha and Chronicle had a real good try. Unfortunately for Boaster, look, at the end of the day, Boaster's not here to drop crazy frags, but he did have a pretty rough final map of the series, which, of course, people are going to be focusing on, with 6 frags on the Omen. Forsaken had 23. But, like, at the end of the day, that's not the be-all and the end-all. Without Boaster, this team would not be where they are. But Lotus, they won a 14-12, and as Ryan pointed out, that they won a 2v4 to win the grand finals. Obviously, such a frustrating way to lose if you're Fnatic. So heartbreaking, but PaperX, man, deserving champions. Yes, Fnatic, if you look at the history of Valorant, still the most consistent, the most successful team, maybe the best team in many respects that we have seen, given what they've achieved with some different iterations, but what they've achieved over time with a roster that they've put together and been pretty consistent with is mega in terms of consistency. But PaperX finally did it. I just wanted to really look back at where it started, right? Because I remember talking about when they lost to DFM at the kickoff, they lost to DRX 2-1, they lost to Gen.G 2-1, they lost to Boom Esports 2-1. Look, I still felt like, and I remember saying it at the time, that, yeah, they might have started this stage 0-3. It's not over. They've got DFM to play. They've got Global Esports to play. They played those 2 series. They won them. The DFM one was not clean. I mean, the Pearl was an overtime. Let's not forget, right? Could have been a crazy different circumstance if that didn't happen. But this was about the time where Sliggy made his call about the track by track, that PaperX are actually going to do it. And it was quite the time to make that call because, yeah, I don't think PaperX were as bad as they looked, but certainly did I expect them to make the run that they did? Absolutely not. They made the lower bracket final. They lost to RRQ, but they did enough, winning all of these series to eventually qualify for Masters Toronto. And once they turned up to Toronto after winning all of the EWC qualifiers as well, then it was different gravy, right? Yeah, they lost to Gen.G early doors, but after that, beating Liquid as they did on that map 3 Lotus, I mean, this pretty remarkable 14-12 that they could have very nearly lost. And then since then, it was pretty much an absolute masterclass. So yeah, it's cool to see a team that plays Valorant in that way win. I think that's kind of my takeaway, that PaperX just, I don't know if they exactly play the game as it's intended to be played, but I don't think it's far off, really. Like, I think that is the type of Valorant that was maybe always going to win at some point, but there was so many questions on whether, like, the style that they play could really work at a really top level consistently, whether they could beat a more, let's say, disciplined team in the grand finals. But yeah, W Gaming, they get the job done. Some reaction from the Fnatic guys, of course, really frustrating, as Crashy says, depressing ending to an amazing lower bracket run, because they came from the very first round of lowers after losing in the first round. So yeah, shout out to my teammate who deserve everything he says. Alpha, of course, frustrated. He says, look, just hate losing in finals. We'll come back stronger next time. Chronicle actually apologized for what happened yesterday. We talked about it, and I found it difficult to explain. But yeah, Chronicle says, finishing on a sad note, super happy for PaperX. They were super strong in this tournament, proved why today. And for us, we're going to try so hard for champs. I believe we'll be motivated for this. He also gives a few words to Something. I don't speak Russian, so let's see what this has to say. Well done, Something. I'll tell you again, you are awesome, and I'm sincerely happy for you. And then he says, a big sorry for me for the clown show on Twitter that I did yesterday. Not my style. I should do much better. So thought that was nice to see anyway, kind of finishing off the tournament on a pretty strong note. Boaster, it's tough for him, as he says. I'm exhausted. Boys played so much good Valorant here. And it was kind of nice to see as well Fade, coach of Wolves, of course, team that eventually fell short in third. But he says, all the people calling for Boaster to be replaced know nothing about the game and forever will stay clueless. Without him, Fnatic will never make it far this year. In the current meta, all IGLs have to adapt every single game because there's so much diversity that exists in terms of agent comps and playstyle. He's doing a great job leading the team to second place. Very close final. Yeah, wasn't landing crazy shots this event, but that's exactly why he has 4 cracked aimers on his team to compensate for that weakness. Pairing is great mind. They make a good team. Cheer up, Boaster. Look forward to playing you again in the future. The match today was one of the most fun I've ever had because of your in-game leading. So, I thought that was pretty nice to see, to be honest. And yeah, I'm sure Boaster can keep his head held pretty high. It's just frustrating to come so close and then lose, of course, again. And Forsaken wins the MVP of the tournament. Just what a tournament, right? Like, honestly, great stuff. I think as the tournament went on, it really ramped up into a fantastic finale. What a day of esports yesterday as well, with the Valorant World Champion, or the Valorant Masters Toronto, not champs, crucially. And then, of course, the Counter-Strike Championship, the major out there in Austin. But yeah, as Jing says, track by track, Masters champions. What a crazy story, right? And as FNS says, refused to go up there, refused to cry on camera. Like, it was too much. And I thought it was nice to see Tens give his love to these guys as well, because we know how big of a fan Tens has been of those guys. And, you know, not winning until now was obviously eating some of them rather alive. And as Tens says, proud of the Paper X guys, easily the most fun playstyle to watch in Valorant. They have been due for a win, and they eventually get it. Boostio says, so happy for Paper X. They won a tournament after all these years. Some of the all-time great and all amazing people. So, you know, surprising comment from Boaster to actually kind of be nice, but he decides to close it out in Boaster fashion and says, thank God Boaster and Crashies didn't get another one, right? That would have been painful to take. So at the end of the tournament, these are now the earnings all-time from the teams. Edward, after winning last year's champions, they're sitting at 1.3 million, but Fnatic now in second behind Paper X after the championships that they've achieved domestically and now internationally, topping the lot in terms of earnings. So yeah, all-time list continues to ramp up, but of course now the attention turns forward because the EWC is coming up at the start of July, and then after that the second stage gets underway. That then concludes with the playoffs, and then I think the playoffs in Europe anyway conclude on roughly the 1st of September, and less than a couple of weeks after that, that's when Champions begins in Paris. So that's going to be a conversation for the near future. But yeah, what a tournament. Hope you guys all enjoyed it over the last few days as well. It was a great day for esports yesterday. Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.